On the 8th of June, 793 AD, monks on a small island off the coast of England looked out to sea and saw something they had never seen before. Dragon-headed ships, dozens of them, moving fast. By nightfall, their monastery was in flames. Their brothers were dead or dragged into the surf, and the world had just met the Vikings. What followed was 300 years that would reshape Europe, open new trade routes across 2 continents, and plant the first European footsteps on the soil of North America. 5 centuries before Columbus ever left port. This is the real story of the Viking Age. Forget the horned helmets. They never wore those. The Vikings were Norsemen, people from what is now Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. For centuries, they had lived as farmers, fishermen, and craftsmen along the fjords of Scandinavia. They were skilled shipbuilders, experienced traders, and deeply spiritual people with a rich mythology built around gods like Odin, Thor, and Freya. But by the late 700s, something changed. The population was growing, land was scarce, and their longships, the most advanced vessels of the age, were ready. So they went looking. The raid on Lindisfarne was just the beginning. Over the following decades, Viking longships appeared on rivers and coastlines across Europe. They struck Paris. They sacked Seville. They pushed deep into Russia along its great river systems, trading furs and slaves as far south as Constantinople, which they called Miklagardar, the Great City. The longship made all of this possible. Shallow enough to navigate rivers, strong enough to cross open ocean, fast enough to strike and vanish before any defense could be organized. It was the most effective military technology of its era, and the Vikings had built it themselves. Entire kingdoms began paying tribute just to keep the longships away. The English called it the Danegeld, the Danish tax, paying your enemy to leave you alone. It rarely worked for long. But here is what the history books often miss. The Vikings were not just destroyers, they were builders. In Ireland, they founded Dublin. In France, they settled Normandy, and their descendants, the Normans, would go on to conquer England in 1066. In Russia, Viking traders known as the Varangians established the trade routes that connected the Baltic to the Byzantine Empire, laying the foundations for the cities of Novgorod and Kiev. And then there was the Atlantic. Around 870 AD, Norse settlers reached Iceland, an island virtually unknown to the rest of the world. Within decades, they had built a society there, complete with one of the earliest parliamentary systems in history. Then, around 985 AD, a man named Eric the Red was exiled from Iceland and sailed west into the unknown. He found Greenland. His son, Leif Erikson, went further. Around 1000 AD, Leif Erikson landed on the shores of North America, a place he called Vinland, 500 years before Columbus. The remains of his settlement, found at L'Anse aux Meadows in Newfoundland, Canada, are still there today. By the 11th century, the Viking Age was drawing to a close. The kingdoms of Scandinavia had converted to Christianity, bringing them into the broader European world and softening the culture of raiding. The kingdoms they had terrorized had grown stronger, building permanent defenses and standing armies. The element of surprise, the Vikings' greatest weapon, was gone. The last great Viking king, Harald Hardrada, died at the Battle of Stamford Bridge in 1066. 3 weeks later, his distant cousin William the Conqueror, himself a descendant of Vikings, invaded England and won. The Viking Age ended the way it began, with ships, with warriors, with the world changing in ways nobody saw coming. Today, the influence of the Vikings is everywhere. The days of the week carry their gods' names. Thursday is Thor's day. Wednesday is Odin's day. The English language contains thousands of Norse words. Half of England's place names have Viking roots. They came as raiders. They stayed as settlers. They explored as adventurers. And they left behind a world that still carries their fingerprints, carved as deep as the runes on a stone that has survived 1,000 years of wind. Which part of Viking history do you want to explore next? their gods, their ships, or the truth about what really happened in Vinland? Drop it in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe. We are just getting started.